Hello, homeschool families. My name is Kelly Harrell, and I am here to talk to you about one of my favorite subjects today, and that is the subject of writing. Now, it's one of my favorite subjects because I am an author, and I have been writing and publishing stories for about the past 10 years, writing and publishing novels. But I tell you, I actually wrote my first book or creative writing story when I was 6 years old. I still remember what the cover of my Garfield notebook looked like. It was a spiral ring notebook, and I wrote a story in there about a girl named Katie and her horse. So, writing is very important for a lot of different reasons. And we're going to talk about that in today's video. Now, I've had the privilege of teaching in the classroom for 12 years. I taught both kindergarten and first grade in the classroom. And for the past 12 years, I have worked with homeschool families. And I will tell you, unfortunately, writing is one of those subjects that we tend to kind of neglect, be it because, phonics and reading seems more important sometimes in that language arts, especially when I was in the classroom. We only had an hour and a half for language arts, and when you are trying to teach between 20 and 32 kids, that time goes by super fast. And a lot of times we just didn't have that extra 20-30 minutes for writing. Sometimes one of the issues with homeschool families is when they hear writing, they think of penmanship. And so they are focused on the actual formation of the letters. So they'll say, oh, yes, we do writing every day. This is my kid's handwriting book. No, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is actually writing sentences, stories, paragraphs, and essays. Okay. Even in kindergarten, we are going to start in kindergarten, actually, even in preschool, with our writing ability to start honing that writing ability. Gosh, you know what? Keep your kids' journals, because there is nothing like pulling out your kids' journal when they are almost all grown up. This is my daughter's kindergarten journal. She's now 16. And this is the very first thing she wrote on her very first day of kindergarten homeschooling. Our topic for that day, we were, for years, we had this tradition where on the first day of school, we went to the zoo because, hey, we were homeschooled. And what better way to start the school year than to start it with a field trip, right? And so her journal prompt for that day was, what do you think you will see at the zoo? And so as you can see, she drew this awesome picture of a monkey. She did not do the writing down below, though. That's a little too nice and neat for a kindergartner. This is my husband's writing, because after she drew the picture, she dictated the story to her dad. In preschool and kindergarten, this is totally normal, and this is where you start. You tell your student or your child, draw me a picture, and then you say, tell me about it. And you go ahead and you write down the words. Then she got, for a while, she really, really wanted to actually write. And so she didn't like that her dad wrote in her journal. And so she would actually dictate the story and insist that she be able to write the words in her journal herself. Now, one of us wrote, I'm wondering if my mom wrote that. I don't know. But one of us finished because her little hand got really tired, and so then we started doing that. Well, you start writing and then we'll finish. But then you can see later on in the school year, she was writing a couple sentences all by herself. I went to SeaWorld. I go on the spinning ride. So she drew a picture, and then I said, tell me about that. And that's what she told me. We wrote in SeaWorld for her, but she was able to write, using her phonics, she was able to write the rest of the words. So journal writing is super important for kindergarten and first grade. I do recommend that you do have your kindergarten or first grader write in a journal 3 to 4 times a week. Sometimes they can pick the topic, or sometimes you pick the topic for them. It could be related to something they've done, something they like, something they want to do. Again, it's up to you. Earlier we talked about literature and reading, how important it is to read literature with the younger kids. If you are going to read a book like The Very Hungry Caterpillar to them, their journal writing for that day might be based on the story. Maybe even something fun like, if you were a caterpillar, what would you eat? Right? So it's something kind of creative, but then you're also tying it into that literature. It could be research based. Even in kindergarten and first grade, you can have your student do a research project. My daughter, excuse me, because it fell on the floor. Okay, like the cutest thing ever. In kindergarten, she researched all of the 7 core My Pretty Ponies. Yeah. And then she wrote on every single one of them. And so here's an example of one of them. We found pictures of each one, and we just printed them off. She colored them in, cut it out, and put it on the paper. And then she wrote all about the pony. Star Song is blue with pink hair. She likes being on stage. She sings and dances. Star Song is shy off stage, but loves the spotlight. Seriously, a research project when she kindergarten, right? And I will tell you, one of the reasons it's super, super important to start this at a young age is to kind of break through like those mental walls that go up within kids. I do not know what it is, but if you don't have your student do writing from the time they start kindergarten, they could create, like, have this mental block of, I can't do it. Now, how many of you, maybe you've been homeschooling for a while and you're like, I really need help in writing, so I need to watch this video, okay? And how many of you, I wonder, have you told your kid, okay, I want you to write on this. I want you to write on our trip to the beach. And they say, I don't know what to write. I can't do it. There can be so much drama around your writing time. I tell you, that drama is cut in half if you have your students start writing in kindergarten. You give them the opportunity. All writing is telling a story. The difference is, instead of using our voice, we use our words. And who doesn't love a good story? And you can explain that to your students. And sometimes we have make-believe stories, and sometimes we read real stories. Those make-believe stories are called fiction in the writing and in the book world. And those real stories are called nonfiction. And by having your student do it again at a young age, then it kind of, it brings down that mental block that can go up. There are different writing journals, writing prompt journals out there. This one we got from Lakeshore, and this was my son's when he was in first grade. And I don't know why, you guys, but he started at the back, which was totally fine. And he didn't do this every day. I think I had him write in this journal once or twice a week. Okay. And then he had another journal of writing prompts I would give him. So this is, it starts with a writing prompt, or it tells them what to write about, and then they finish it. And this is baking cookies. To bake cookies, follow these simple steps. First, so he's learning how to make directions, how to write directions. And he wrote out the directions of how to make cookies according to Noah. then it asks them about some of their favorite things, my favorite food. And we had just made rock candy for a science experiment. And so he decided that was his favorite food and he wrote about it. Totally fine. It has little brainstorming activities for them to do to help them. Again, it's teaching them different types of writing, which is super important. Here's another one about playground rules. And so he drew a picture and then he had to write about it. Now, you might notice his pictures don't have as much detail as my daughter's. That's okay. And he even got to the point by the end of first grade, he said, Mom, I don't want to draw a picture. Can I just write it? And my response was, as long as you put in good details, that's fine. You don't have to draw a picture. And he always did good details in his story. The picture really is for brainstorming, and it's also for the younger kids. It's a lot of times an easier way for them to communicate through a picture than it is because they don't actually know how to write the words yet. What about inventive spelling? Is that okay? Absolutely. So really, I would say from preschool to second grade, you let your student sound out the words and put the sounds that they hear. When do you want to correct that? Well, as they are learning high frequency words, that's one of the reasons it's very important for your students to learn high frequency words is so that they can transfer to their writing. As they learn high frequency words, make sure they are using them in their writing. It's even a good idea to have a wall on your house or a board in your house, or even give them a word book with the high frequency words that they're learning. And those are also called sight words. I'm sorry. So sight words, high frequency words, those are basically the words that they're using a lot, but they might not know how to sound out depending on the grade level and their phonetic awareness. Okay. So make sure they're using those words. Also, like if your child is learning CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant, like cat, well, your kindergartner, if they're writing about a cat, should be spelling cat correctly because that's within their phonic knowledge. If they have learned the long vowel, quiet E makes the vowel say its name. Well, if they're writing a paper or a paragraph about a kite, make sure they're spelling kite correctly because that has the quiet E at the end and makes the vowel say its name. So I think you can kind of see that's how we want to kind of correct their spelling along the way. Please do not give your kindergarten or first grader the impression that everything in their journal needs to be perfect. It's best to break them from that habit early, but make sure that they are using the knowledge that they have to spell things correctly. And if they're not, then you want to go back and review their writing with them and make sure that they're putting that into practice. As they get into second grade and up, they might be doing a spelling program. And again, usually the spelling is based on different rules, phonic rules. So make sure that whatever they have covered, they're using that correctly in their writing. So that's important. So journaling is important in my estimation all the way through junior high. But as they get older, then you have more directed writing because then the expectation by third grade now is that they can write a complete essay, a 3-paragraph essay. The Institute of Excellence in Writing is a curriculum for homeschoolers for writing specifically. That is just phenomenal. This is one of my favorite books that they put out, and this is really great for about 4th graders. The company does have some religious-based curriculum, but this one is actually secular in its teaching. One of the things I loved about this is you don't need a separate teacher's guide. All the directions are in here. These lessons are super great. It takes, I taught this program to my son and some of his friends in fourth and fifth grade. And we would meet once a week, and I would go over the lesson and the expectations for that lesson. And it would take about an hour for us to go over the expectations for the lesson, and for me to teach it to them and teach them what was expected and everything. But then they would be independent for the rest of the week in finishing this project. So the neat thing about IEW, what it teaches them to do is it teaches them to read a passage, and then they go through and they take out the keywords, make a keyword outline, and they use those keywords to then go back and structure their own sentences, to make their own paragraph. And this particular curriculum is really cool how it builds on itself, because it starts that way with paragraphs, but then by the end you're working up to a complete 3-paragraph essay. So it's really a great way to teach your student the structure of writing. By third grade, you have to be teaching your student the structure of writing. That, I think, is one of the biggest downfalls when it comes to teaching writing, especially in the homeschool world. If think of it like a building, right? And there's all this scaffolding that has to happen, and you need the frame first before you put up the walls, and before you do the floors, and before you do the ceiling. Well, we can't just give the students a piece of paper and say, write an essay. You have to teach them how to do that. So IEW, the Institute of Excellence in Writing, is a great program to teach your students how to do that. They even have much older, like junior high and high school, history-based lessons that are fabulous. They have a book that is fairy tales and fables. That's great. There are also different programs that are grammar and writing based. This one is Saxton, Grammar and Writing. This is a very structured grammar and writing program, and what's nice about it is it has them do grammar on specific days and then structured writing on other days. And so it's not like a structured writing lesson every single day. On those days that they're focused mostly in the grammar, you just have them write in their journal for 20 minutes. And again, they can write about something they read about. They can write about their weekend. What did you do this weekend? Or what do you want to do? What do you... you can also search online and get like lists of writing prompts for students. So it is important to give your kids some type of structure when it comes to writing, so that they can produce better quality work, and also to lower their stress and anxiety about writing. That's what they need, is structure. Step Up to Writing is a great program that I used when I taught in the classroom, and I used it in my first grade classroom. Most of their curriculum is classroom based, and it's kind of hard to get a hold of. So you could look online and see if you can get that. If you're really interested in it, and you can always contact me, and I can kind of give you the gist of the program. But that was great because I taught it to my kids in first grade, and it gave them this structure so that they could go forward and be successful in writing paragraphs, even in first and second grade. And then we worked on writing essays from there. There are lots of different types of writing. There's descriptive writing, there's persuasive writing, there's informational writing. So make sure that you get a good writing program for, especially by the time your student gets to junior high, because you need them to know all these different types of writing. There are a lot of online classes available too. Write on Web is an online writing program. Another one is Write at Home is another writing program that is junior high and high school, that is online. Never feel bad about sending your homeschool student to a class, okay? It's We have this joke with one of Becca's friends who lived down the street when she was younger. Macy used to always say, "Mom, it's weird. Becca homeschools, but she's never home. When I go down to play with her, she's not at home." Because I did have my kids in different classes. I needed to do that because I worked full time. I still work full time. But there were also certain ages that and different subjects that I just did not feel comfortable teaching. I told you when my son and his friends were like fourth, fifth grade, I taught that writing curriculum to them. But then, you know what? I didn't really want to go any further in the area of writing. Even though I'm an author, I love to write fiction. And so it was not fun for me to teach my kids how to write. And I also wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything in the process. So they started taking writing classes, and my daughter actually started attending a writing class from the time she was in fourth grade. I do not regret that at all, though, because then they were able to actually start college classes, community college classes in 10th grade because their writing was so strong. And that's something you need to remember if you're homeschooling for the long run, and if you have the big picture in mind, and even if you're just homeschooling for a year, really big picture in mind, your student needs to be strong in writing in order to succeed in high school and college. Because, like I said before, it goes across all of these different areas. So let's talk about what if your student is a high schooler and loves to write fiction. Okay, I just need to give a little plug here because I feel passionately about helping my kids chase their dreams. And if you have a kiddo who wants to be an author when they grow up, once they get to be a teenager, there are lots of different resources for them. IEW actually had a guide, I'm assuming it's still out there, called A Guide to Writing Your Novel. There are different curriculums that are like a year-long base, teaching your kid how to write a novel. This was one of the first books I read when I decided to become an author. Well, when I decided I was already an author, but when I decided I really wanted to publish my books, I wanted to get better in my craft. The series of books is called Write Great Fiction. And so this one happens to be on characters, emotions, and viewpoint. They have one on setting. They have one on dialogue that was fabulous. But these are really great books because it explains it. But then at the end, there are actually different questions, different scenarios for you to write about and for you to practice what you've learned. So if you homeschool and if your high schooler wants to write, you could actually create a creative writing course for them in which they read books like this and then they develop those skills. Okay. And this was also another awesome book. James Scott Bell is a really great author who teaches about writing as well. And Write Your Novel from the Middle was a good book about structure, especially for someone like myself who's not really into brainstorming. I'm a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. I don't always know what's going to happen. But this book was really good. It's short and it had a lot of really great ideas in it. So that's a lot about writing. There are so many programs out there. If you are going with a religious-based curriculum, there should be a writing curriculum included in that, which is fabulous. Again, start when they're young. Start when they are in kindergarten. Have them draw a picture. Have them tell you about it. Have them write the words that they know how to write. It's all very developmental, but just like reading, just like math, You cannot give your second grader a pencil when they have not done any writing or any journaling up until then. You can't hand your second grader or 7-year-old a pencil and say, write me a story or write an essay about this person, and expect that they're going to do it successfully. If you do that, there's going to be a lot of tears and a lot of, I can't do it. So start young, make it fun, allow them to choose what to write about. I have several students on my roster for, I oversee homeschool families through Springs Charter School. And I have several students on my roster this year who decided to write their own books. And I love it. These third graders are so excited about writing and making up stories that they're doing it on their own. That's something that you really want to encourage and that you want to nurture within your student, because then it just makes so much of school in the future easier, because writing is a very, very important part of your students' education. If you have questions about anything I have talked about in this video or questions about homeschooling in general, please feel free to contact me via email, through my website, or through just send me a message. I'm here for you. You can do this.